Hi, this is Ocho. Do you ever wonder about people? Me too. I even created this podcast to help us find out about them. It's called I Don't Do That. It's where we get into things that we're not into. Starting now. Na 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 na, yeah, no, I don't do that. No, I don't do that. You know it's alright, you can ask, but I don't do that. No, I don't do that. I don't do that. I don't do that. Episode 5.
I have found that I am a resourceful learner. I have found that I have all of this information available to me that I can just go get and learn.
Episode 5 is I Don't Have My High School Diploma. We're talking with Melody Taylor, who does not have her high school diploma. Melody is a percussionist and an author. She has written 5 novels in the urban fantasy genre. She also has more in the works. She's from Generation X, lives in the upper Midwestern United States, and identifies as white and female. You can learn more about her books and read her blog at melodytaylorauthor.com. Melody, thank you for being here today.
Well, thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure, and I look forward to our conversation.
I think it'll be fun.
So we're here talking about not finishing high school?
Yeah.
Okay, and not having a high school diploma.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you tell me what school was like for you when you were in it? If you think of your younger self, what were you like as a classmate and as a student?
Sure. So I was always the weird kid. I was always the odd one out, just socially. And I always felt like I have a friend who's a school teacher, and I tell him frequently that like he's doing a much better job than I ever got when I was a kid. I feel like elementary school and high school both really failed me.
Yeah.
I very much felt like in a lot of my classes I was being held back to the level that the other kids were at. And I always, if I wasn't being held back, I was being rushed forward faster than I could go, faster than I could think, faster than I could catch up.
So at some times you're like, I know this already, get through it. And then other times, was it confusing? Is that how you rushed? Okay.
Yes.
So there's definitely like this polarity. So did it vary by subject then? Is that what it was? Or?
Yep. English and reading comprehension and science. I always felt like I was reading ahead in all of our textbooks. Like the teacher would have us be reading and then doing a quiz of whatever chapter we were on, and I would be 4 chapters ahead because I just found it interesting and comprehensible. Math, I was always falling behind and just never got the assistance that I needed on any of that. So
were you reading for pleasure then too?
Oh, a lot.
Okay.
Yes. I come from a family of readers. My mom got me hooked when I was a kid. So
Sure. What's your family like? You got brothers and sisters, or?
I've got 2 sisters.
Okay.
2 sisters that I was raised with, and then 1 half sister on my father's side that I just met a few years ago.
Oh, okay. So growing up, it was you and 2 other girls?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And where were you in the birth order?
First one. I'm the oldest.
Okay. So you're the oldest, and sometimes in school, so you're the weird kid?
Yep.
How so? Like, besides academically, there's a disparity, but how, are you weird in other ways?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I definitely had a strange sense of humor that the other kids didn't get.
All right.
I was the one who was reading for pleasure, and pretty much nobody else was. Or there were like 1 or 2 boys who started getting into sci-fi right around 6th, 7th grade. But like prior to that, I was really the only kid with a book in her hands all the time.
Sure.
Like I said, weird sense of humor. And I came from like just a different family, I feel like, than the other kids did. My mom was a weird mom, which, I liked that. I very much enjoyed having a weird mom, but everybody else's mom was very like standard Midwestern mom.
Sure. It's funny. I know exactly who you're talking about. Like,
Yeah.
I could point them out on the street.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And there were so many kids that had families like that, where they just had like a very standard like sitcom.
You feel like you take after your mom then, or?
In a lot of ways, yeah.
Okay. Well, that's great. I mean, and it kind of explains the weirdness.
Yeah. Oh,
it was
yeah. I
from
come by
home.
it honestly.
Sure,
Absolutely.
Sure. So it seems like we're talking about primary school, like K through 6 here, or
Yep.
Okay.
Mostly.
was that public school then?
Oh, yeah.
And was that in a small town then, or?
A medium-sized town, Eau Claire, Wisconsin.
Okay.
Was where I spent a lot of my childhood.
Okay. And like how many would be in a classroom with you?
20 to 30, depended on the year.
Okay. And but you're not finding allies in your school. You're not finding people you have anything in common with and that kind of thing. Did you have friends to speak of? Or?
A few kids that I would hang out with a little bit. But the one girl that I was best friends with in first and second grade, her family moved away right at the end. Like on the last day of second grade, I walked her home and she jumped in a U-Haul and they left. Mm-hmm. And she was the only kid that I had anything in common with at all. Her parents were artists.
Sure.
So she came home from a weird family too, it worked out well. But
yeah, that's understandable. It seems like most people who are like quirky or who have interests or whatever, those don't really develop because they don't have the autonomy to choose them when they're that young.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so.
Like, I liked what like He-Man and G.I. Joe and so because that's what I was supposed to like.
Right. Yeah.
Did your school recognize that you were gifted at all?
Oh yeah, we had a gifted kid program. We had the Alpha program, ALFA, a learning program for high achievers. No, ALPHA, a learning program for high achievers. And my problem with that, it's been how many years
since I was... It's an awkward acronym.
I
was trying to make sense out of it. Yeah. Because there's an F in there, but there's not.
There's not.
I get it.
Yeah.
And like is that a word that you're supposed to abbreviate? So, anyway.
I know.
Anyway,
it's bizarre, but it's also been like I said. I the last year I was in the Alpha program was 6th grade.
I could just imagine you correcting them and being like, isn't supposed to be abbreviated as a word.
It doesn't make sense in this acronym, FYI. But it was literally me and 2 other girls in the entire elementary school that were in the Alpha program.
And how many total?
Us 3.
Oh, just 3. Okay.
It was just us 3, and that was
you
it.
And 2 other girls.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
And that was
no
us.
Boys.
No boys.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to say you were a minority, but okay. So 3 girls, and that's it.
Yep.
Okay.
And I was constantly in and out because I had really, really high scores and like high achievement in science and reading and all that. But my math scores would, anytime I was out of math class, my math scores would dip really bad. And the Alpha program took place during math hour.
Okay.
So I was taken out of math to go participate in the Alpha program.
Yeah.
And then my scores would dip in math because I wasn't attending.
Yeah.
And then they would kick me out of the Alpha program.
Yeah.
And I'd go back into math, and then my scores would come up, and so then they'd put me back in the Alpha program, where I would then be taken out of class during math.
What was your perception of that? Were you aware of that was it, and that was why? I mean, did you have any thoughts of like, hey, I don't belong in this gifted program, or like?
No, I knew I was smart.
Okay.
I knew I was smart. I would get mad every time they would kick me out.
Right.
Because I was like, I hate math.
Right.
And I don't think that makes a person smart or not. Like, why?
Yeah. It does seem to be that there's a heuristic, like this mental shortcut of like, you are either a smart kid or you're a dull kid. Yeah. You're like, you're something like that, but like there's without kind of regard to subject matter. They think if you excel, you're pretty good at all things.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
or like you're at least average in everything. And
right.
Like, I definitely went to school with people who have the same story,
Oh, I've heard it. I've heard it over and over and over again. And then I also recently found out that I have ADHD, which I didn't know until about 2 years ago. And one of the things I heard a lot when I was a kid was, "You're so smart. Why don't you do better in school?"
Right.
Apparently, that is like the rallying cry of the undiagnosed ADHD kid.
Yeah.
You're so smart. Why don't you do better in school?
Right.
Why don't you focus? Why don't you do your homework? Why don't you do your assignments? Because they bore me.
Yeah.
Because
what am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
You expect me to do that? To sit there and write out the same, just answer the same math problem over and over.
Over
It's
and
the
over
same
and over
concept.
again. I've got it.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm ready for something else
Did
now.
you feel like you understood concepts, or do you know what your issue was with math now? Or
Oh,
like,
I know precisely what my issue was with math.
What would you say?
The major issue with math was the timed math test. I did not start struggling with math until we started having to do a timed math test every single day. The first couple minutes of math class was you had to do 100 problems in 1 minute.
Yep.
And if you didn't do it, and then you had to read your score out loud to the rest of the class.
Yeah.
And I would just freeze with anxiety.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't even do one. And so then the teacher would say, okay, so what's everybody? She would read the answers off. She would answer the one, number one, answer to number two, answer to number three, all the way down. And like for every point, for every problem you got right, you got a point. And then she said, okay, now everybody read your score out loud to the rest of the class. And everybody else is doing like 80, 90. And I'm like, zero.
Sure.
Zero.
Yeah.
And the entire class turns to look at me.
Yeah.
Which, of course, just makes the anxiety worse.
Sure.
So then I just started to dread math.
Yeah.
And the only help I really got was the teacher would say, do you have any questions? And my hand would shoot up. And then they would come over and they would do a couple of problems on my paper and say, there, do you see how I got that? And I would say, no.
Okay.
And the response of every single teacher was to go,
Right.
set the pen down and walk away.
Yeah.
Like, my question has not been answered.
Right.
Like, get back here.
Yeah. So there really wasn't any follow-up with that?
No.
Or like, wow.
No, none whatsoever. And so the timed math problems in elementary
Could you find
school.
you could do those problems if you weren't in class, or if you were like, okay.
Yep.
So
Totally.
yeah. So the anxiety, I mean, it's competition, and then it's also being up in front of everyone.
Oh, yeah.
And then,
like public shaming.
yeah, public shaming, public anything. I mean,
Yeah.
So can you tell me about the circumstances under which you left school? When was that?
So there were actually two different periods where I left school.
Okay.
The one was in the middle of 6th grade.
Okay.
My mom had started to pick up on the fact that I was just miserable.
Yeah.
And the teachers were telling her that I wasn't applying myself. And she was like, well, she's miserable. Like,
Yeah.
of course she's not applying herself. When you're miserable, you don't apply yourself. And a friend of hers, younger brother, was being homeschooled by his parents, and we'd never really heard of that before.
Okay.
But he was doing really well. And she said, you know what? Let's give this a try. Do you want to do homeschooling? And I said, hell yeah.
Yeah.
I do not like
Yeah.
any of the other kids I'm in school with.
Yeah.
I don't like the teachers. I don't like the curriculum. Like, yeah, let's absolutely try homeschooling.
Okay.
So that's what we did. She took me out of school middle of 6th grade, and at first she set up like a schedule and then had textbooks and stuff she wanted me to be working through. And then after about a week of that, she said, you don't seem any happier. And I said, I'm not. And she said, I think we're trying to mimic school too much.
Right.
Let's branch out. She said, let's just go to the library. And what do you want to learn about?
Right.
And I said, I don't know. I like dolphins a lot. And she said,
Yeah.
let's just get a bunch of books on dolphins. And then you give me a report at the end of the week what you learned about dolphins. And then
Yeah.
we'll go back to the library and do it all over again.
Wow.
So that's what we did.
Wow. That's well, your mom is very open-minded and willing to take on quite a project too.
She can be. She
Yeah.
really can be.
Yeah.
She's got a backbone of solid steel, I feel like sometimes. And when she puts her mind to something, or when she sees something needs fixing,
Yeah.
she goes for it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's great. I mean,
So,
it seems like you were fortunate to have that opportunity.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I know so many like other kids' parents who are like, oh, she's struggling and I don't know what to do for her besides just keep putting her on that bus and sending her in.
Yeah.
And my mom was like, she's struggling. We're going to do something different.
Yeah.
We
You
gotta
two-
take a chance here.
Yeah, you probably get each other pretty well, because if you take after her and that kind of thing.
It in some areas, it depends.
Sometimes. Well, yeah.
But anyways, so you had said about the time I left school. So
Right, and
sixth grade was the first time.
Okay, and you were homeschooled for how long?
3 years.
Okay.
And then we moved to Mankato, Minnesota from Eau Claire.
Yeah.
And I didn't have any friends.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're a little kid, like school is how you make friends.
Mm-hmm.
I tried joining the 4-H program. That wasn't great.
Mm-hmm.
I tried joining like a couple of different groups and clubs around the area, but a lot of the kids really clicked up because of who they knew in school.
Right.
So I said to Mom, I want to try going back to school. I don't know if I'll like it or not. And she said, well, in Wisconsin, you can take a kid out of school for any reason whatsoever. Mm-hmm. In Minnesota, there's a lot of rules, and we don't meet them.
I see.
So if you go back to school, that's it. You're back.
I see.
And you're stuck.
I see.
I was like, okay. So I thought about it. I thought about it for several months. And then I said, I'm just freaking lonely. Like, I'll try this.
Wow.
So halfway through 9th grade, I started at West High. Mm-hmm. And we were coming back from winter break.
Okay.
And all the teachers were doing testing to see what you had retained over winter break.
Right.
And I put my hand up in the first period class, and I said, so we're doing this test on material that I haven't learned. Mm-hmm. Like, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to sit it out? Do you want me to take the test? Like, how do we want to do this? Uh-huh. And the very first teacher was a science class, and he said, I would like you to take the test just so I have an idea where you're at. Uh-huh. I said, sure, okay, that makes sense. I can do that.
Yeah.
So I took the test. I got the test, and I looked at the questions.
Yeah.
And all the other kids were groaning over how hard it was. And the next day we got scores back, and they were not good. And the teacher was unimpressed with what the kids had retained. And it kind of lectured a little bit like, oh, you guys weren't really doing very well. I got a perfect score.
Okay.
And I was dismayed at how simplistic the material was.
Sure.
And I thought to myself, I have made a terrible, terrible mistake.
Yeah, this is going to be boring.
This is going to be so boring.
Okay.
I am already well ahead of everybody here. And now I'm stuck in this structure again, where I could be doing so much more and learning so much more and knowing so much more than what they are going to teach.
So you felt back in the same place as you were 3 years ago. How long did that take? A couple days, you were saying? Or like?
Oh, no, that was the first test.
First day?
First day.
Okay.
First day.
Okay. And did you sort of have the same difficulties in math and that kind of thing too? Or yeah.
Yep.
So.
Oh yeah. Exact same difficulties. And then further yet, I had missed a couple years of beginning algebra. And I was jumping right into like the lowest class of algebra in high school. It wasn't remedial, but it was like Algebra 1,
something like that.
Yeah, something like Algebra 1 for high school. I had not been taught the order of operations.
Right.
I had never heard of the order of operations.
Yeah.
They did not ever reteach the order of operations.
Yeah.
So I kept getting the wrong answer consistently.
Yeah.
And when I would ask for help, the teacher would come over, do a problem without saying anything, and say, there, do you see how I got that? And I would say no.
Did they have any tutoring or any? No, they had.
Nope. They put me in remedial algebra.
Okay.
And then we did a unit on graphing. And I just shot up with an A+ in graphing. But then we went back to algebra, and I went right back down to an F.
Right.
And I could not understand why I wasn't getting the right answer. And it was, I think I was in my mid-20s, and I was complaining about this to a friend. And he said, oh, yeah, because you got to remember the order of operations. And I said, the who, what now?
Yeah.
Because even in remedial algebra, they did not bring up the order of operations.
Were you talking
once.
to guidance counselors and things like that? Was anybody like...
I was talking to a guidance counselor, and her entire response was, you're so smart, why don't you do better? So...
It seems like, I mean, I suppose hindsight is 20/20, but it seems like we can look at your situation right now and say like, wow, it's very clear that there are certain areas that were deficits and certain areas where there's just a huge surplus of knowledge. And it's like, couldn't they do something
Yeah.
for you in your as a student in your unique situation?
No, yeah. Nope. Nobody wanted
But
to.
we can. It seems like we can pinpoint exactly what it was. It wasn't even just algebra. It was like all these parts of algebra.
Yes.
Maybe algebra except for graphing or whatever.
Right.
Minus graphing, if you will.
Yes.
So you do that much math, but like, wow. You'd think that something could be done. Like someone could be nurturing your strengths or helping you out with these other areas that are difficult, and going back and being like, we'll just get you as caught up as we can, or doing something like that,
Nope.
But there wasn't any. Yeah, I mean, I haven't worked in the education system except for a little tiny stint I had in a high school, but everyone was on IEPs in this high school because it was an alternative high school. But
Oh, yeah.
was there any options like that? Was there an individualized program for you, or alternative school?
There was an alternative school, but the alternative school was where the kids who were on parole went, or the girls who
Yeah.
were pregnant.
Sure.
And it was dumbed down. Mm-hmm. It was for the slow kids.
Yeah.
It was definitely not for exceptional kids.
Yeah.
Or for kids that were exceptional in some areas but needed assistance in others.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine how dull that would be.
well, not only dull, but these were, like I said, these were the kids that were on parole. So there were drugs.
Dangerous.
They were constantly fighting
Yeah.
and going back to jail.
Yeah.
And going back to juvie.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't a safe environment.
So was that talked about, or was that just off the table? Like, there's
Oh no, that was not.
was
Like
never
I knew
talked
I knew it was available.
Yeah.
I was not the slightest bit interested in
Sure.
setting foot on that campus.
No one suggested it to you or anything.
Not even a little bit. No.
Okay.
I think the guidance counselor, the the worthless guidance counselor, I think she suggested it, and I was like, "Are you joking?
Yeah.
Are you joking?
Yeah.
I'm in advanced English
Yeah.
and pulling A's.
Yeah.
Please explain to me why I need alternative high school
Right.
because I can't get through algebra.
Yeah.
Because I hate it here and I'm bored.
Yeah. You don't have to convince me. It sounds like a bad idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
So when I was 16, I had the flu, and my mom was a college student herself.
You say we started in 9th grade. So where are we at now? 16?
16, so I'm partway through sophomore year.
Okay. So you did stick it out like a year and a half, maybe, or something like that?
I tried.
Yep.
I tried really hard.
Yeah.
But I got the flu, and my mom was a college kid. She was a college student herself. We didn't have health insurance. The state health insurance that we have available today was not available at the time.
Well,
So I got sick. I got sicker than a dog.
yeah.
And I couldn't go to the doctor.
Yeah.
But we knew it was the flu. My baby sister had health insurance, and she caught it from me, and she got to go to the doctor, and she was diagnosed.
Right.
So we knew it was influenza.
Yeah.
I was sick for a month
Uh-huh.
before I started to feel better. And when I went back to school, my guidance counselor came and took me out of class and said, "Where have you been?" And I said I had influenza. She said, "Do you have doctor's notices?" And I said, "No, I don't have insurance." And she said, "You're going to have to repeat this year if you can't provide doctor's notices."
Right.
And my mom called
Yeah.
and said, "This is bullshit."
Yeah.
She was sicker than hell. I
Yeah,
wasn't
yeah.
going to send her to school. She
Yeah.
couldn't even keep her eyes open.
Yeah.
Like, how is she supposed to provide a doctor's notice when we do not have health insurance? And the school said, regardless, if she can't provide doctor's notices, she will have to repeat this year.
Yeah.
And my mom said, "How about if I sign the paperwork for you to drop out?"
Yeah.
And I said, "Sounds good."
Right.
So that was the
didn't-
second time I left school.
You didn't, I hesitate. You always have options, but at that point, it's sort of the writing's on the wall, right?
I was very backed into a corner at that point, yes.
Yeah. And it seems as though that the policy was such that, it's discriminatory against people of a certain income if you
Oh,
can't
100%.
afford to have health insurance. Yeah.
And that's still
you
the
don't-
policy to this day.
Is
which
it really?
Oh, yes, it is.
But there is state insurance now.
Yes, that's an
So
option.
there's that to hopefully
Help fill in some of the gaps.
yeah.
Yeah, but if you're undocumented, you can't get state health insurance.
That is true too. And this show is all about exceptions. It's all about exceptional people who don't do that. Maybe they don't have documentation.
Right.
Maybe they don't have health insurance. They don't. There's people who don't.
Right. They don't.
Right.
Exactly.
So we think about them here, and we pay you tribute. So how did people react to you leaving?
Depends on the people. Because I was malcontent, I had fallen in with a bad crowd.
Okay.
And before I dropped out, pretty much most of the kids that I was hanging out with had already dropped out.
Oh.
But a lot of them were starting to drink or starting to do drugs or were in and out of juvie or were pregnant. And I was starting to disassociate from them. I was like, I'm dropping out, but I'm not dropping out for the same reasons that you are dropping out.
Did you acquire any of those bad habits? Or
I did not.
Okay.
Strangely. I did start cutting school a lot.
Right.
Because I was like, why am I here? This is pointless. I'm leaving. But my mom's response was, if I sign this paperwork for you to drop out, you have to promise me you're going to get a GED and you're going to go to college. And I'm 16. I said, I promise. I totally promise. That sounds good to me. And so she signed the paperwork.
I just want to take a second in the middle to talk to our listeners. Thank you for listening to this podcast. I've been getting a lot of positive feedback about the production and the concept and the content. If you are a financial contributor, I want to thank you especially. Even if you're just giving a few dollars a month, it really does help keep the lights on around here. And to anyone who is interested in making a contribution, you can do that at idon'tdothatpodcast.com/give. That's idon'tdothatpodcast.com/give. Now back to the show.
My teachers, I had to get a signature. I had to go back to class one more time and get a signature from each of my teachers and from the either the principal or the vice principal.
Okay.
The vice principal yelled at me for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So that just
I'm sure that
convinced me.
helped.
It did. It just convinced me even more that I did not belong there.
Right.
A couple of my teachers just signed the paper and didn't even look at me. One of my teachers said, this is a sad day. You're a very smart kid and you have a really great attitude. I don't like signing this paper for you.
Yeah.
And I was 16. I shrugged.
Yeah. I suppose that's what you do.
I was like, I can't help you with that, man.
Yeah.
Just get me out of here.
Right.
So
anybody else, any classmates or anything? Was there any reactions from them? Or?
Not really. I had one or two of the kids in my advanced English class who were mad at me. But they just repeated the same thing. You're so smart. Why are you doing this? And I was like, I don't know, maybe because I am a little too smart for this place.
Sure. Yeah, it's not set up for you. It seems like maybe is the answer in hindsight.
Precisely.
Yeah.
This isn't a good place for anyone of any kind of exceptional ability, whether that's exceptionally needing help or exceptionally smart. Like,
especially if it's both. I think that's got to be
right, which was even more frustrating because I definitely needed way more help in certain areas, but I was definitely just excelling on my own in others.
Yeah.
And I couldn't get assistance either way.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd be interested in what I don't make this show a public forum at all because it's about people being able to tell their story, and I don't think anybody else has anything to say about it. But I would be kind of interested in knowing what people involved in the education system think about a case, like yours.
Yeah.
Today or in other places or whatever, maybe they have something, or like it would be good for people to think about that anyway, people in administration and whatnot. So.
Yeah, you would think.
Yeah. So did you get your GED then?
I did get my GED. Okay. I got it early, and I got a 99% score on it. I was supposed to take, because I was under 18, I was supposed to take classes and then practice tests before
Right.
I actually took the test to
Yeah.
get the GED. I went into the fellow that was coordinating all that, and I said, I don't want to take courses. I don't want to take practice tests. I just want to take the test, and I want to get this over with. And he said, okay, I've got a waiver here that I can sign and get you into the actual testing.
Yep.
I said, great. So he did that. And it's funny, I was telling somebody else about this a little while ago, and they said, he probably expected you to fail and have to come back and take the courses. And I was like, maybe. That's entirely possible.
Yeah, I don't know.
But instead, I flew through with flying colors, passed with a 99%, and got my GED when I was 16.
And there is math on this, right?
There's math on that, yeah. But basic math, not algebra.
Yeah, okay.
Which I've always been able to understand. I can't do it fast, but I've always understood
Yeah.
addition, subtraction, multiplication,
Yeah.
division, long division. Those make sense to me. I've got it.
Yeah.
No problem. There was a little bit of algebra on there,
Yep.
which is why I got a 99%.
That's the 1% there.
Yep, because I scored 100% in reading comprehension. I scored 100% on the essay part. I scored 100% in the science reading comprehension. And then I scored just under a perfect score in the math. And I know it was the algebra questions that tripped me up.
You any better at math now?
A bit,
Yeah.
I would say. I can make change like a demon.
Nice. Yeah, that's great. Do that arithmetic quickly.
Yes, yeah, I can do
That's
that.
probably what you were in grade school. They were pointing out that you couldn't do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and then the other thing I think is funny is when I was in first or second grade, I was counting on my fingers to get the answer. And the teacher came over and said, you can't count on your fingers. And I said, why not? And she said, because when you're an adult and you go to the bank and you need to take out money or put money in
Yeah.
and you sit there and count on your fingers, everyone will laugh at you. And I was thinking about that the other day. I was at the bank and I was counting on my fingers
Yeah.
to find out how much I wanted to take out and how much
Right.
I wanted to put in. And guess who laughed at me?
0 people.
0 people. Because we're all adults, number one. And number
Yeah.
two, because as far as the bank is concerned, I'm a customer.
Yeah.
And you don't laugh at your customers.
No. No, customers do way stupider stuff than that, and they do not get
Right.
laughed at. So you got your GED. Did you go to college then, like you said, or?
I applied to MSU to go to school, and I was accepted. I applied in the spring and was accepted early summer, and then I thought about it through the summer, and in the fall when it came time to enroll, I decided not to.
Okay.
And then I did a couple years later try going to South Central Community School.
Yeah.
And I was in school for a week and a half. And I called my sister and I said, I feel so frustrated and so out of place.
Yeah.
And so much like I do not belong there.
Yeah.
And she said, why are you doing it? And I said, I don't want people to be mad at me for giving up. And she said, so you're doing this to impress other people? And I said,
Right.
oh my God, good point. And I got off
Yeah.
the phone with her and I went and I got online and I unenrolled from all my classes.
All right.
And I paid $200 in student loans.
Was that feeling any different than high school? And no, it's all the same.
It was
It's
very
just
much the same.
Boring and like I don't need to go through all this kind of thing. And
I was sitting in Comp 101
yeah.
and we were reading a book. It was a really good book.
Yeah.
The book was A Lesson Before Dying. I don't remember the author's name, but it was a really good, really intense book. And the instructor wanted us to write a one-page essay on why the main character's task was so daunting.
Sure.
And I was like, this is going to be a hard essay to write. Like, how do you define exactly like what he's going through is really tough. Like, this is going to be tricky to figure out. And the kid behind me, who is almost 10 years younger than me, raised his hand and said, what does daunting mean?
Yeah.
And I went, I got to get out of here. I got to get out of here.
Yeah.
This is not where I belong.
Right. Right.
And so I asked my Comp 101 teacher if there was a way I could test out of the class. And she got really mad at me and told me that was extremely presumptuous. And that when a student requests to test out, it creates all kinds of extra work for the instructor. And that was very inappropriate of me to ask. And I was like, all right, I'll just leave then.
That kind of sounds like she just didn't want to do like the work that she's hired to do. I mean, it's exception, but it's still something she's supposed to do, right?
Yes, technically. Yeah. I feel like she was very invested in college as an institution and as the only institution available for like moving forward or moving up or being intelligent. Like, this is your only option. And damn it, you're going to go through it the way that you are supposed to go through it, because that's how I went through it, and that's how people are supposed to go through it. I really got that impression from her when I talked to her.
Yeah. So, okay, do you find yourself at a disadvantage, or do you find any benefits?
Both.
Okay.
On the one hand, college particularly, I never found myself to be at a disadvantage with not getting a high school diploma.
Okay.
I never found myself to be at a disadvantage with that. Not ever.
Okay.
A GED is generally accepted as being just as good by employers and colleges everywhere.
Okay.
Like, it's just not a thing.
Right.
Nobody actually cares. Like, they tell you to stay in school and get your diploma. Nobody actually cares.
Somebody probably does at some elite schools and things
I was going to say, I'm betting
like,
you can't get into Harvard with a
Right,
GED,
right.
but I never wanted to. So there we are.
Yeah.
But yeah, like MSU, like the more medium-sized schools, none of them ever cared that I had my GED. They were way more concerned about my SAT scores, which were also in the 90th percentile.
Right.
So there we go. I have found that I am a resourceful learner. I have found that I have all of this information available to me that I can just go get and learn. Like, if I want to learn about anything, I got really curious about Islam a few years ago, and I just went and got a bunch of books about Islam and started learning about it.
Yeah.
And I love that. I love that we have that available to us as a population. I love that it's not something you have to pay for. Library cards are freely available, and libraries are very well stocked. And if you can't find something you're looking for at your local library, you get it from another library. Like, they can get it in from another. It's phenomenal.
And used paperbacks are like $5.
Precisely.
Online, you can get any book delivered to your house.
Exactly. Exactly. There's so much knowledge available.
I buy used books and paperbacks and read them and then give them away, because like that's I don't want it hanging out, but
right. Like, once it's in your brain, you got it.
Yeah.
And then somebody else should know that.
Yeah, or maybe I'll loan it out, maybe I'll get it back, and maybe I won't, but it's like $5, $10.
Right.
It's great.
It's great. Yeah. Absolutely. We have a ton of knowledge available to us. And I feel like of the college grads that I've met, I don't feel like a lot of them, some of them do, but I don't feel like a lot of them understand that or take advantage of it or know how.
Yeah.
And I do, which I love. So I feel like that's a benefit.
Yeah.
As far
and you have
as,
curiosity.
Yes.
Like, that is a thing that you have.
Well, and it's been nurtured.
Yeah.
Like, when I was curious about things when I was a kid, school never nurtured it, but my mom did.
Right.
And my grandparents did.
Yeah.
Like, that was huge.
I'm guessing school might have done the opposite of nurturing it.
Quite a bit, yes.
Yeah.
Quite a bit,
That's kind of what it sounds like. Okay.
Yeah. So I feel like that's a benefit.
Yeah.
I feel like the high school diploma is a non-issue.
Yeah, but the college degree might be.
The college degree has been a little bit of a problem.
Okay.
Simply because college is so billed as a track to get a job.
Right.
And it's so frustrating because I also heard on NPR the statistic that 89% of college graduates are not working in their degree's field. And that's huge.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Me too. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's like, why would I want to take out these incredible loans and spend so much time in a place where I'm miserable to get a job that I probably can't even get with this degree? However, lots of other, like, more professional or executive level positions do require a college degree. It doesn't have to necessarily be in the field that you're applying to, but they want you to have something. And if it's kind of relevant, then that's great. And I don't. And that has been a bit of a holdback.
Yeah.
But I don't I don't want to work in those positions anyway.
Yeah.
So
Some interpretation I might offer is just that you are and have been like your whole life. You've been a leader of yourself, if nothing else, and not following these things. And these institutions are there to institutionalize you, and they
Yes.
prepare you for more institutions, and that just might not be your thing.
precisely.
Yeah.
Precisely. I definitely have always been like a strike out and do my own kind of thing.
Yeah.
Kind of person.
Are there any exceptions to that? Are there any institutions you belong to or that you're fond of, or
Nothing I can think of.
Okay. I do think we've talked a bit about, like, there's definitely some smart people who are successful in school.
Yes.
And there are smart people who are unsuccessful in school.
Yes. And quite successful outside of school.
Yeah, exactly. And then there are people who are not as bright as average who are good in school.
Yes.
And you know what we would expect, the people who fail because they're not that bright.
Right.
Sure.
Right.
So there's all kinds of outcomes.
Oh,
And
yeah,
that's-
100%.
And so you're sort of an exception or an outlier. Being a smart person, it's been demonstrated, and you're not shy about it. And I knew it before you came in here because we've known each other. So I knew it when I first met you. You know, it didn't take long to figure out.
I'm proud of the fact that I'm bright.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
I don't want to lord it over anyone, and I don't think it makes me better
Yeah.
than other people.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's like having green eyes. I'm proud of the fact I have green eyes.
Sure,
I like my green eyes.
sure.
I'm proud of the fact I'm smart. I like being smart.
Sure. And it seems to matter less as an adult too than it.
Yes.
They tell you it matters more than it does.
Oh yes. Oh yes.
Yeah,
oh
yeah.
yes. And then
But that's probably true for everything as a kid. They're like, "Oh, you're so fast. Oh, that's good. You're gonna succeed in life because you can run fast."
because
Or-
you're fast.
You're like, no.
No, office jobs don't require you to be very fast.
Yeah, pretty much nothing requires you to run fast as an
No,
adult.
not at all. Not unless you go right into athletics.
Right. Yeah.
And how many people actually do that?
Professionally,
Yeah.
it's so slim.
Right. It's
Yeah,
such a
yeah.
narrow margin.
You have a pursuit, an intellectual pursuit that's your passion.
Yes.
Which is writing novels.
Yes.
Urban fantasy novels.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Urban fantasy.
Okay.
So I write vampire novels. I have a couple of fairy books out. I'm working on a ghost story.
Yep.
The elevator pitch for the first vampire book is this. The main character has not been a vampire for very long. She's only been a vampire for a couple of years. She was turned by her best friend, and in the first chapter, her best friend is brutally murdered. She has no idea who would do such a thing. She realizes she doesn't actually know a whole lot about his past, and now she's completely on her own, and the killer is coming after her, too. She has to figure out how to survive as a vampire without a mentor, but also try to figure out why the killer is coming for her and stop him before he can hurt her.
That's exciting.
That's the first book.
And that's in the dark?
That is in the dark.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, that's wonderful.
Thanks.
Yeah. Is there anything tied to I don't do that we have, like, that we don't have our high school diploma that's related to writing? Or would you say that, like, you write just as well or better not having it?
I would say I write just as well or better not having it.
Okay.
Just because it's such an innate thing. I was reading a book about language and the development in humans, and it was brought up. Steven Pinker, really
Yep,
fun
I
author.
know Steven Pinker, yeah.
Steven Pinker's great.
We read the same nonfiction, I'm pretty sure.
I'm pretty sure we do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We should trade some books.
We should.
Yeah.
But one of the things that he brought up was that language is an instinct. And it's something that if babies have the right environment, they will just grow up doing it. They just do it instinctively. Writing is a human invention that must be taught. And some people are good at it. Some people are naturals at it. Some people can muddle through okay. And some people suck at it. And it's the same as, like, being a car mechanic or building a house or knowing electric. Like, it's a human invention, and it's something that must be taught and must be learned.
Yeah.
And it's not innate. It's not something that everybody can just do.
It's a technology.
It's a technology
it hasn't
versus
always
an instinct.
existed either. Like,
Precisely.
probably.
Precisely.
So, yeah. I think all the theory I know goes along with that too. So
precisely, and I find myself in the fortunate position of just being a natural.
Yeah.
At it.
You're
I just picked it up right away.
Yeah.
My mom handed me the Chronicles of Narnia, and I dove in, and that was it. That was it for me.
Do you have experience being educated writing, or is it all from learning it?
All self-taught.
Yeah, okay.
It's all self-taught. One of my other favorite nonfiction subjects to read is how to write a good novel.
There you go. So that was an education for you then, like reading other books?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
reading
definitely.
books on writing and that kind of thing?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's great. Is there any other ones you'd recommend? Or?
There's so many.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily recommend Stephen King's On Writing. It's not a bad like beginner book.
Sure.
But it doesn't take you past any like starter concepts. I really liked Lawrence Block's Telling Lies for Fun and Profit.
Okay.
Which is a fun title.
Yeah.
And then it's just a pretty well written book. And I understand. I haven't read any of his other books, but I guess he's got a whole series on writing that's really fantastic. I really liked Getting the Words Right is the name of the book. I cannot remember the name of the author.
Okay.
The Art of Fiction was another one. Strunk and White. The Elements of Style.
Yeah.
Such a good basic, like, get started, get it right book.
Yeah.
As far
When
as...
do you use a semicolon? Strunk and White, they know.
They know. They can tell you.
Every single time.
And in, like, a couple paragraphs. Like, they just lay it out. Here it is. Here's how you do it. Go.
Yep.
Go forth.
Yep.
Go forth and write.
I love using semicolons because I know how.
I know.
So they're really useful.
They can be. In the right place, they're perfect.
Yeah.
Absolutely. If you want to get...
I read Kurt Vonnegut, something he wrote about writing, and he says just don't use them. He's like, but he's funny. He's funny.
Fair.
He made it funny when he said it, but yeah.
Fair enough. You want to make sure that you're not overusing strange punctuation, but when it's right, it's perfect.
Yeah.
And then as for a little bit more advanced, like plot structure, the Story Grid, I picked that up a couple years ago, and it was illuminating. It was totally illuminating. There's lots and lots of books on fiction writing that talk about sentence structure and characterization and dialogue and like building backstory and all of that, but there's not very many that really get into how a story should be structured. Like first A, then B, then C, then D, then the end. Like the character needs to be accomplishing X in order to move towards Y. Like that's very much in a lot of writing books that I had picked up, that's very much just left to the author's imagination, which can get very frustrating when you recognize that there is a structure, but you do not know what it is.
Okay.
So the Story Grid was hugely helpful in figuring out exactly what that structure is supposed to look like and how to move a character through a situation in a way that is interesting and keeps things moving.
Yeah.
So I really loved that book. It was, like I said, it was just totally illuminating. I loved it.
It seems like you could offer some education on how to write, and that.
I probably could.
Yeah.
I probably could.
Yeah. And that you and without a formal education, you can still do that.
Yeah.
I think these days people are we're sort of realizing that we can learn a lot of things on our own, and I mean a lot of it is the internet.
I hope so.
I figured out what was wrong with my toilet. I'm not.
Yeah, I love that.
I'm not that kind of guy, but I'll just give an earnest try at anything.
Right.
And there are people out there who want to teach you things.
I hope so. I know there's a lot of reskilling going around, but a lot of that has to do with like homesteading. Like there's a lot of knitting and canning and
gardening,
that kind of thing going around. But it's like there's so much more. There's so much more that you can learn just on your own.
Yep. You can learn and you can develop your own ways to do it too.
Oh yeah.
Which is wow. Like that's to me the part of the thing about not going through the mill of education is that you come out different. And like,
Yeah.
we've all read Stephen King, you know?
Yeah.
Like I suspect his book on writing was really rudimentary because he's going to write another one, you know?
Could be.
he's a very commercially like marketable guy. So
Yes.
he's probably like, oh, I could write 3 or 4 of these if I just write them in little stages.
Sure.
So, but yeah, we've all read Stephen King and like and we love him, but how many do we need? What are your thoughts on that about people going to school and going and doing the regular thing?
If that's what suits you, more power to you.
Yeah.
Like, the reason why these institutions are set up the way they are set up is partly because it does suit a lot of people. We need to start making availability for exceptions for the exceptional, instead of just assuming that everybody is a cookie cutter and all fits into one shape. But for some people, school is very interesting. It's a way to get out of the house.
Yeah.
It's a way to learn things that they wouldn't otherwise look for themselves.
Sure.
I mean,
socialize.
To socialize, absolutely. All of these things are perfectly valid and perfectly reasonable. But like I said,
learn how to function in an institution.
Yeah.
We were talking about that.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you want to go into an office job and climb a corporate ladder, college is a great place to start.
Yeah.
And I don't want that. But that doesn't, I'm not everybody.
Right.
Like, that's fine. Everybody wants different things. I don't want children. I like dogs, but I don't want one in my house. I love cats. Not everybody agrees with me on these things.
These are future episodes.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
I want to write books. I like urban fantasy. I don't like romance. Like there's, you know, everybody's different. Everybody's totally different. And what suits one person very, very well, great, go for it. It doesn't suit everybody. And I think that's the main thing that we need to get away from, is that just because something suits a few people or even a lot of people, it doesn't mean it's going to suit everyone. And it doesn't mean that those people are bad or not going to succeed or shameful in any way. So.
Yeah. Just because you don't fit in.
Right, exactly. Like not everybody's going to. They should be allowed. It's fine.
And you will fit somewhere else.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Precisely. Yeah. I've definitely found my place. I was always the weird kid, always the outcast when I was in elementary school. In high school, I started finding more like me. As an adult, I have found the musicians and the actors and the dancers and the readers and the writers. I have found my people. And I didn't have them until I was probably about 17, 18 years old. But now I have them, and I have so many of them, and they're great.
Yeah.
And like I know where my tribe is.
That's amazing, Melody. I'm happy for you.
Thanks.
Yes.
Me too.
And thank you for being here on the show.
You're very welcome.
All
Thank you
right.
so much for having me.
People, did you like today's podcast? Maybe you want to show your support. Please visit idon'tdothatpodcast.com/give to make a donation in the amount that you choose. That's idon'tdothatpodcast.com/give. You know, it would help us very much, and we'll help you out too by giving you access to exclusive content with a donation of any amount. idon'tdothatpodcast.com/give. And or if you have an interesting, heartfelt, or entertaining story about something that you don't do and you'd like to talk to me and get into whatever you're not into on this podcast, please visit ochotunes.com/guest to apply to be a guest on our show. My name is Ocho. I am your host, chief engineer, and producer. I also composed and performed the theme song. Shout out to Uncle Bam's Spicy Meme Shack in Vancouver, British Columbia. Shout out to the nomadic minister, Melissa Ketchum. I got to compose and record music for her podcast, The Awakening Hour, which will debut on November 11th on all platforms. If you need any music composed, recorded, or even performed live, please contact me, Ocho, on my website, ochotunes.com. Shout out always to our sponsor, Anders with Primetime Web. Background music was performed throughout today's episode by Tyler Watson. Thanks again to our guest Melody for sharing your thoughts and stories.
Just because something suits a few people or even a lot of people, it doesn't mean it's going to suit everyone.
And thanks to all of you for all that you do and all that you don't do. I will talk to you again, if I'm lucky.